So then, we are back at the more understanding from the time of the second tabernacle services, from the time of the prophets, and the time of Israel's prophets of Yahweh, giving us then the understanding of the time of the end. These documents studied are from the original Torah. As we understand, the word Bible does not come from the original manuscript. It was invented. So then our quest starts with the true Torah, or the instructions. This is what it means. Evaluating what's coming in the future and what people are so afraid of, the 21st of December 2012, it is quite remarkable the lack of information available regarding then the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, and then the time of the end as per instructions. What people have in mind these days is a pagan calendar where they find some indications of a time of the end not related with the precision from the original calendar of the Creator. So then, what is the point where we find then a discrepancy from the time of Yohanan, the first 1,000 years, and then the second 1,000 years of Nahashatan, ended in 2009, and why is there a discrepancy then in 2009 until 2012? The answer is very simple. You find Yohanan known as John while not in the island of Patmos. He was in the holy city on the mainland. When he entered the city, he spent 36 months in the city. That's where you find a discrepancy. So then when you find 2009, the 2009 mark was then the ending of the 1,000 years given to Nahashatan in Revelation the 20th chapter. The reason why it goes back and forth in terms of Revelation and the prophecies of the Torah is because people don't have the understanding in layers. People tended to have their minds as they were born from verses, numbers, and chapters. You can't read the Holy Scripture or the Torah this way. You have to understand it in layers. But it's not complicated. You have then the 1,000 years of the Messiah is already gone, far gone in the past. It was truly from the time of Yohanan in the holy city until 2009. In terms of the relationship of Gentiles and the holy city. However, when the Messiah was born, he was already born as a king. The time of the kingdom, or his reign. His reign was not regarding the kingdom to come, but his reign as directives. As his cities then were set for giving directives, and they did. The 1,000 years is gone. Then the other 1,000 years where you find Nahashatan then also is gone. But then his calendar, Nahashtan's calendar, is out of precision for 36 months. What people are so concerned is then the end of the reign of Nahashtan. In quote, the God of this age. If you are speaking of a spirit of this age, you have to have a perception of a calendar of this age. Mayan calendar, Hindu calendar. Other calendars, if you study those calendars, they have a similitude in out of precision of 36 months. So whatsoever Nahashtan was concerned was then the end of his rule. But the time is not yet. The Messiah said in 24th chapter of the first gospel, though there are earthquakes, wars, rumors of wars, pestilences, earthquakes, and so on and so forth, then he said the time is not yet. There is a piece of truth behind of these disturbances where then people should not be disturbed. This is what the Messiah was explained. Those are not my words. Those are the words of the Messiah. So then we find ourselves during this time where people, they want to go into those silos and bunkers for no reason. Read the scripture. When was then the Messiah born? 4999. The computer was able to calculate. Why? Because the Star of Bethlehem was a recording, astronomical, secular, recorded on the documents of the period. There are censuses of the period. There are lunar eclipses of the period, and the computer was able to calculate based upon the seasons of the Hebrews. Each year they were trained to practice certain feasts. Those were the times where they would give specific spiritual understandings, and in the future became the shadow prophetic events in the Torah. Then what you read in Hebrews 10 makes sense. For in the Torah there are prophetic shadow events. So begin to relate to what those mean. He was born in 4999. He was placed on the pole 5032. When did he spend time with the Samaritans? Roughly a year before, because the ministry of the Messiah was 490 days, precisely. Half of the Torah, half of the prophets. Autumn feast is half of it. Autumn feast is the other half. 490 days. So then, when you find the Messiah spending time with the Samaritans in 5032 per the Creator's calendar, 2,000 years later, as each day is 1,000 years, and he spent 2 days with the Samaritans, 1,000 years each. The Messiah was indicating a prophetic understanding of the time of the Gentiles in the earth. 2,000 years later makes 7031. What year are we at? 7012. Giving us yet 20 years roughly until the end. So what does the 2012 means? It means nothing. It's not part of the calculation. The big event went in 2009 or 7009. It was the transitional time from Nahashtan's time expired and back into the truth. Reduction of time from 7031 and the restoration of the holy cities, as per Isaiah or Yeshayahu 61st chapter. So the calendar of the regular Nahashtan's calendar of the Mayans or the Hindus, then you find out of precision. Because when Yohanan entered the first holy city, he had a lot of work to do. He had the entire Megillas of the Torah. He had the Megillas of the Shilishim, or then the Apostles. He had explanations of the Messiah. They had many manuscripts of the Messiah, and those had to put in order. He spent 36 months in the holy city preparing for the people then to go out informing all their holy cities. So then, after he left the holy city was then 36 months later, and Nahashtan was in standby. He did not know what was going on in the city. Then he began to count the time after the prophecy of Yohanan, 10th chapter of Revelation. You have to go out yet and prophesy amongst the peoples, nations, and princes and kings. Thus he did, and from there he was taken to the island of Patmos. From there he never wrote, because it would jeopardize the brothers in the mainland. The whole Bible junk became a novel, as Cornelius never had a vision. You have only a vision when you are in a city, not outside. Outside must be dreams. It must be interpreted. That's the distinction of visions and dreams. Hebraic people, they have visions only when they are in the holy cities. Outside of the holy cities must be dreams, and they must be interpreted. Where was then Yohanan per Bible at? On the island. Was the island a city or was it a prison? It was a prison. He never had a vision on the island. He had a vision on the mainland while he was in the first holy city. So you begin to understand how many lies were then placed in the Bible to confuse the people. The word Bible comes from other languages where you find pieces of it, and those they do not coincide with the real Torah. Bible is a set of documents of pagan related material. You have to understand it from the Torah. Instructions. So then the calendar out of precision of 36 months is the period of time where Yohanan was in the holy city preparing the people for the starting up other cities. Thus, when you read the 61st chapter of Yeshayahu or Isaiah, you find then the returning of the holy cities laid waste for centuries, for generations. So 2012 means nothing. Nahashtan or Satan had his calendar out of precision for 36 months. He was there waiting for Yohanan to come out of the city. He never did. He had no clue what went on. And then when he spoke, then it's going to take place this, because then Yohanan began to speak of the autumn feast. Then the counting began on Nahashtan's side, but then he was out of precision for 36 months because the time already had started when he first entered the city. So then begin to understand when you read the Revelation, and then 1,000 years given to Nahashtan or Satan is already gone. Was from 1009 because of the destruction of the tomb and the holy city of Jerusalem by the Muslims. Then you find 1,000 years later, 2009, that was the place and the time where then Nahashtan then kingdom had ended. "2012 is nothing. It was the time where then he thought, after Yohanan began to speak, he began to count the time. So the Mayan calendar, you find those rings of there and other rings of their clocks. One of them is out of precision. You have certain cores and then other rings around in each of those counting a time. One of them is out of whack. It was the time of Yohanan in the city. Out of precision 36 months. So December 21st, nothing. Go to work. Resume. Do your homework. Another factor is understanding pagan realities, and those are lies. Speaking of lies, pagan realities are lies. In terms of the Torah's understanding of the prophetic, there is always a time of transition. For instance, from the first service established in the desert until the Mashiach, they had to train for more than 1,000 years. When there was a time of transition from the first service and the second service, it was 100 years. Any major event of history regarding with the prophecy, there is a transitional time. Do you think then the world is going to end in a day? Read the scripture. There are steps of formation of a transitioning. We are transitioning ourselves yet for the autumn feast, where then the ice is melting. It's going to melt completely, as we understand, because the temperature on the earth has to be very high in order to match then the description of autumn feast or revelation. Heat produces famine because then lack of rain. And then the weather has changed, but we are transitioning, a lot of ice around yet. So we are in the midst of the starting points of transitioning. 2012 is a bogus. So those people over there living in those bunkers, please advise them, get out of there and find a job. Such as myself, if I had a job myself. But absolutely nothing is going to take place because we are not transitioning. The transitional time is then the changing of the environment for the autumn feast yet to come, and we have roughly yet 20 years ahead. So then we find ourselves during the time of 2007 or 2007, where scientists, they predicted the melting of the ice in a certain rate. And then 5 years later, 2012, we find then the scientists were wrong, and it's melting 60% faster of what they thought. Does it not give you steps of formation of understanding that the earth then is going to change more, environmentally speaking? 07, 12, 60% more than what they thought. Another 5 years won't be 60, more than likely double. So this gives us then the steps of formation, preparing us for the autumn feast. 2012 is nothing. We have a lot of ice around yet. So then observe the ice melting and observe the chapters of Revelation stating of then heat, changing of the environment, heat, famine because of lack of rain, meaning environment changing. The ice must melt. We are transitioning yet, barely started. And then end, and the Messiah said the time is not yet. So people should hold on and understand what the Messiah said, the time is not yet. Don't be disturbed because of this. There is another piece of truth, yet the people are not aware of it. But that's why the Messiah said in the 24th chapter, be aware. Let no person deceive you. So absolutely nothing on the 21st. Set up your alarm clock and go to work as usual. Or go to the beach. Please stay tuned. Much more coming up because then we're going to evaluate more from the autumn feast viewpoint, tracing back from Leviticus the 23rd chapter. Please stay tuned.